Welcome to this special edition of the Financial Journey, where today we're going to be exploring the past, present and future of financial advice. Today, I'm joined by Keith Baggette, the founder of Baggette Co Wealth Management. We will be discussing how financial advice has evolved, where it is going, and Keith's personal journey. So, without further ado, thank you, Keith, for joining us today.
Hello.
So, I would like to start from the beginning. Why did you start Baggette in the mid-80s, and what motivates you to do so?
I started the company to a certain extent because that's what you did. I have to go back a little previous to that. Joined Standard Life in 1981, and back in those days we were called inspectors or pension superintendents, not the boring title of consultant that it is now. And the role of that role within Standard Life was to call on IFAs. Most were called brokers back in those days. And so you got to know the business. Obviously, my job was to persuade them to promote Standard Life products, not Scottish Widows or whatever. But it gives you the sense of wanting to be one of the IFAs rather than one of the inspectors.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, and I think also as a personality, I was key to work for myself. I think very early on I discovered that I was probably quite unemployable. So that was the motivation.
Can possibly comment on that. You're a delight to work with. I don't know why you would ever say that. So what was it like back then? What was the financial advice industry like?
There are many, many constants, but of course there are a lot of differences. And the key difference would actually be compliance, I think, and regulation. When I started, I opened a company and called myself an advisor. Your major challenge then was managing to open up agencies with insurance companies.
Okay.
You didn't have to go and ask any kind of regulator for permission and suggest that you were good enough to be an advisor.
Okay.
So it was literally, get an office and open the door.
Did you have to do any exams?
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure when the FPC, the Financial Planning Certificate, came in, but it was quite a bit later because I think I passed mine in 95.
Oh, okay, something like that. So, and was there any turning points in the business for you? So after you've started it, was there anything that happened that you went, okay, I'm good at this, or this really has legs, this is where I want to stay for the foreseeable?
I think there were a number of turning points. To be honest, when I first started, the primary business was around mortgage work and low-cost endowments and this sort of thing. Personal equity plans, now ISAs hadn't even been thought of back in those days.
That's true.
So your fairly standard work would be arranging a private pension for somebody or doing mortgage work. So but that started to evolve.
So what would you say is the biggest? So obviously there's been a lot of changes, but what would you say are the biggest changes since then? So we've obviously mentioned compliance, but from a financial advisor's perspective.
Well, I think the complexity and the rise of what we used to refer to as unit-linked, because when I first came into the industry, with profits was king.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it was, there were some advisors and the now defunct direct sales forces, Ally Dunbar, Abbey Life, they were unitized. They didn't have anything such as with profits. Okay. It was the old school companies like Standard Life that had profits. So it was but it was the main independent advice industry that started to realise there was unit linked out there, and they started to move into that. So that was a big change. That was a big change.
Would you say that was the biggest positive change as well? The whole independence piece, because you moved away from being flogging products to actually being an advisor.
There was an element of selling products, but I think I'd like to think that I was an advisor from the word go.
Okay.
But let's not beat around the bush. I mean, we used to earn commission, and it didn't even have to be declared to the client when I started. So, and that was when regulation came along. Those were the slow changes. The quotation suddenly included commission expressed as a percentage. Then later on, commission had to be expressed as pounds, shillings, and pence. And there were those in the industry that thought that was the end of everything.
Yeah,
the clients would never take on what you recommended. But indeed, what you always find with all of these changes, however negative you think they are to start with, they're actually mostly quite positive.
Well, yeah, so now we have a very different business model, don't we? So we charge, and I don't mean you and I, but the industry as a whole tends to charge very little upfront, or less upfront than we used to. And then it's more about the ongoing relationship, isn't it?
Yes.
And would you say that's one of the big positive changes as well, that actually you get to know your clients, you get to spend a lot more time with the clients. And that's what I said when I said before about flogging products. It's the long-term relationship that we're looking for with people. We're not necessarily looking to do a one-off transactional business and that we'll see you in 10 years.
That is the massive change. If you go back, other than a little bit of premium renewal, there was very little ongoing. I think the very few companies that were starting to put together unit trust portfolios for clients, then possibly those unit trusts used to pay 0.5% or something. I honestly can't remember. But yes, the move to that method of remuneration and the concept of a longevity relationship with the client was certainly evolved post Financial Services Act.
That's really good to hear, actually. And would you say then that the skills of a financial advisor has shifted with that? Because you've been through a few big events in financial advice that have seen some advisors leave the industry. So the skill set needed to operate in the current environment is very different, I would argue, than it was in the early 90s.
Again, I would say that there's an element of that. I think the first point I would say was that when the financial planning certificate became mandatory, the first two papers were easy. Anybody could pass them. The third paper, well, if you've been in the industry for 5 minutes, the third paper was a little more difficult, and there were a number of I don't say older, but longer serving.
Oh, very
advisors actually really struggled with that third paper and never passed it, and indeed left the industry.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that was something of a sadness, because all that experience, went from the industry. But beyond taking exams, I'm not so sure that skills have changed that much.
Oh, I like that.
Because yes, I think every advisor today needs to be or have a great deal more technical knowledge than perhaps we did have in the 80s. And again, that's a generalization. It might be slightly arrogant to say that didn't affect me too much, because I had a good level of pensions knowledge, and I built Baggette Company on that pensions knowledge and being quite technical. But I do think your average advisor today is far more knowledgeable about a broad range of subjects than perhaps they were back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. But you've lived by that, because at Baggette Co, you've always pushed everybody to do exams.
Yes.
You've always encouraged it. And as far as I know, well, definitely from when I started, you've always paid for people's exams fully. You've always given people time off, and you've always encouraged study. So actually, even when I took over the business, a lot of our power planners were chartered. Most of the financial advisors are chartered, and the firm is chartered, which is obviously a testament to you, because it's a lot easier to run a firm.
I was only going to say that knowledge gives you confidence.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got that technical knowledge, and a client asks you a question, a difficult one, well, you've got two choices. They've got, I'm sorry, I don't know. Yes, come back to you, or you could say, yeah, I can answer that one, and off you go. So it's and clearly the second option's quite a bit better.
A lot. But I found that as long as you're honest with people, and I think you get away with it once or twice in a meeting, saying, do you know what? Great question. Yeah. I just want to double check the details on that. But if that's your answer to every single question, it gets a little bit embarrassing after the third time. You're like, oh.
Is it worth talking to the
Yeah. Who knows more, you or me? Yeah, exactly. So in the industry then, so we talk a lot about what has changed. The things that haven't changed, like you said, is the skill and the interpersonal skills.
Yes.
What has changed is the fact that you have to have more knowledge to be able to be a financial advisor. Anything else you feel that hasn't changed, that hasn't moved on from the 80s and the 90s?
Nothing is springing to mind that hasn't changed. No. I think everything else in one way or another has changed. Yeah, beyond what we've spoken about. There may be people out there that completely disagree with me, but answering off the top of my head, Oscar, I can't think of anything else. That it's much more about change.
Yes,
but not change.
Absolutely, and I mean, at our firm, we use a lot of technology. We try and streamline processes.
Yes, you've just corrected me, and you're right. Technology has massively changed. I used to do some notes on the little Amstrad computer that got very full very quickly. I seem to recall. Sort of technology, yes.
And I seem to remember whenever I came into the office on a Saturday that you used to sit in your office, and I used to think you were crazy because you were talking to yourself. And then I realized you weren't talking to yourself. You were having a dictaphone, and that's how you wrote all of your letters.
Saturday morning was quiet time. Mostly nobody else in the office. Nobody banging on the door. No telephones ringing. Sometimes complex reports.
Yeah.
Phone. Yes.
Yeah. Which is really good, because actually, I've continued your way of working there, because we are very proud of the fact that we write a lot of stuff down and we try and explain it to clients in a way that they can understand it. There's no point, we've had this conversation in the past about suitability reports, and both you and I feel that suitability reports are great and they definitely serve a purpose. But actually, the letter that you send clients after the meeting explaining where they are, yeah, what they've got, and what our suggestions are in a very simple 1, 2, 3 step, is probably what they talk to you about more than the suitability report, because they understand it.
It's an interesting point, and I've had many conversations with compliance officers over the years about this. And on that very point, one thing I can remember is that suitability letters, on the basis of regulation guidance, were getting longer, more and more complicated, and so on and so forth. So what I wanted to do was exactly what you've just said: give the client a basic summary of what you're about to go into detail about. But frankly, on that page is the nub of my advice to you, Mr. or Mrs. Client. I remember that being shot down in flames by a client. On the basis, the compliance argument was that the client would only read the first page and wouldn't then read all the rest of the detail.
Yeah.
Which I suppose I can understand the basis of that argument, but
yeah. But I feel like we encourage people to obviously to engage with the advice, to read this advice report and understand it as much as possible. And I get challenged on this sometimes as well, and I've had conversations with other people about it, and they go, well, how do you demonstrate the client fully understands the advice? And that's not just now, that's back in the 80s and 90s and noughties and tens as well. And I think that's why, for me, what you do is gold, because they're not going to understand it all in depth. Because if they did, either they wouldn't need us, or they'd be financial advisors themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. But what they need to do is need to understand the overall advice. They need to understand the overall direction, and you need to give them comfort. And I think you told me that ages ago. What is your job as a financial advisor? Yeah. And it's to make people more comfortable with their money.
Yes.
And if you've done that, you have done your job.
Yeah. I'd often refer to it as give the client the sleep at night factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And sending them a massive thick report that they might not understand doesn't necessarily achieve that, but giving them something that can digest and hold and go, okay, I understand this. That's great. But obviously, like we said, we still go through everything and make sure that they understand it in more depth. But you usually do that with somebody. Yeah. So we've talked about the past, talked about the present. What about the future? Where do you see financial advice going in the next 10 to 20 years?
That's a good question. And I'm not sure I know, Oscar. Given the changes I've seen over 40 years, I suppose anything could happen. I'm not so sure that we haven't got a pretty good model now. The options available to clients from seeking independent advice, having platforms, having the ability to have money managed. It seems to me you were getting close to a situation of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I'm sure technology and of course stuff that you understand a lot more than I, such as AI. AI to me, we used to be the old main road up north. But that clearly it must have some sort of impact. But right now, clients have their options: independent advice, the online options, or no advice. So where it will go, I don't know. I think the industry will struggle in advisor terms.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, there were two main routes to becoming an independent advisor. Either the route I had, which is you worked for an insurance company, and whenever you were ready, you could set up your own business. The other route, which is all but gone, it was through the direct sales forces. And of course, we had, as I mentioned earlier, you had there were several of them, but the Abbey Life and LI Dunbar were probably the best known ones. But you also had the old, what we used to call industrial branch. That's the man from the Prue.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. And it's all gone. But of course, if you were a man from the Prue, you had your knowledge, you had your rate book, you were knocking on the door to get your side bulb. But there were a lot of those people, came over onto the independent side. So there were all these routes that frankly have all but gone, and so we're having to rely on new blood coming from people choosing to do something like a financial services degree at university. And of course, there's no experience with that, is there? No, there isn't the experience that those older companies I've just mentioned used to give before you're thrust into the advisor world. I know some of the bigger companies, do have very good training programs. Dare I mention them, but I think you're going to know who I mean when I say we don't like them very much, but they have a fantastic training program. But that's what concerns me, because statistically, I think it's still the case that the average age of an advisor in the UK is 57 or 58 or something.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was a recent report out, yeah.
Like myself, okay, I'm 65 nearly, and I'm not planning on retiring fully for some time. But, even I know I can't go on forever.
No. Well, so you raised some very interesting points there, because for me, right now, there's really two ways into the industry. One is the direct route, either by training or just doing your exams and becoming a financial advisor. Or the other one, which is probably the most normal one and the safer route, is to work in client servicing, study, get your diploma or a certificate, become a power planner, and then become a financial advisor.
Yes.
One thing I've always mentioned about that route when I talk to young, inspiring financial advisors is that it's a little bit, and I use a dressmaker as my analogy. Working in client servicing is like sourcing material. Working in power planning is like making the dress. And being a financial advisor is working on the shop floor and selling the dress. Those skills aren't necessarily that transferable between each other. Yes, you know how the industry works, but it's not necessarily a really, really good route, because if you're a phenomenal power planner, that does not mean you're going to be a good financial advisor. I personally think I would have been a terrible power planner.
I agree, Oscar.
And I think I can count you in my category there. So it is an interesting route. So then, what advice would you give somebody who is an aspiring financial advisor, who wants to become a financial advisor? What would you tell them to do?
Study. Try to gain experience in the ways that you've just described. But I think the most important thing is to try and latch on to an experienced advisor and learn from them, but also ask them, do you think I've got what it takes? Now, a nice person will be honest with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can just tell. Personally, I think somebody who clearly lacks empathy can become a brilliant technical advisor, but it's not advice in my world.
No, I agree.
So, but I think the only way is, rather than trying to cut your teeth on clients and failing miserably, I think it could be far better to latch on to an experienced advisor and take guidance, take good guidance.
Yeah, that journey sounds quite familiar to me.
I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet.
That's what we did, so for us and how we've always worked and how you've supported me throughout this is, I've gone and seen the clients myself. You've been in very few of my meetings, but then I've written a report. I've done a file note. I've written the whole case up. I've got an idea in my head of what I want to do, but then I've come to you. Usually I'll be able to grab you, given you my file, and said, what would you do? And that way, you've been able to either give me guidance or go on, have you thought about this? Have you talked to this person? And that really helps you accelerate. And I think a lot of people, they are very quick at asking questions, and it's very difficult to answer them then. Because if I just came to you with a case blank and went, what would you do? It's very difficult for you to give any steer. Whereas if I go, I think I'm going to be doing this, I've prepared this, I've done the whole file, I just want you to kind of dot my I's and cross my T's, that's a lot easier, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's akin to, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a series of solutions, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. I love that, yeah. And I say that to people, the best thing you can possibly do is come to somebody, be it your line manager or whoever, and go, I have a problem, here is my proposed solution, let me know if you're okay with that. And then it usually goes all smoother, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, one of the last things I wanted to ask you is, back in 2023, you made the decision to step back slightly from the business. Could you tell us your thought process there and how that felt and any lessons that could potentially be learned from that?
It's a very personal decision. And I can honestly say one that probably even 18 months before, if you told me that I might be doing that, I probably would have laughed at you. I think older people will recognize that there comes a point in your life, and my life had personally changed for the better, and I was more comfortable with the concept of enjoying life outside of work. As we alluded to earlier, my work used to be certainly at least 5.5 days a week and so on and so forth religiously. But the big factor was that I did have in you somebody I felt confident about offering for you to take over the baton and take my company forward in ways that I know I couldn't do. Have that youth and exuberance again, and as well as the understanding of technology and so on and so forth. So it was just the right time. And frankly, you've also got to have a sense of your own mortality. I was into my 60s by then. And it was a fantastic opportunity for me, and I hope it was a good opportunity for you.
Yeah, it was a fantastic opportunity for me, and one that I'm going to be eternally grateful for. So what would you like your legacy to be then?
Well, that's a good question. It isn't necessarily that you carry on calling the company Baggette Company forever.
I'm pretty attached to the note, but
it would be nice that the way that I structured that company to look after clients continued. That's why I didn't sell out to a faceless consolidator. And some people watching this might say, well, oh, that sounds so twee. But that's the reality. It's true. And that I would hope that above anything else, that ethos would continue with the company. But other than that, as long as somebody remembers me occasionally, fond word. Oh, he wasn't so bad, Keith. Yeah.
But you said to look after clients, and I think obviously that's important. That's why we're here. Absolutely 100%. But one of the things you've definitely taught me was to also look after the people in the business, and I think you've always done that. It's silly stuff like having Christmas parties, and I know that's going to sound really stupid, but you've always been very good at putting your arm around people and asking people like how they are and how things going and getting a little bit involved. And I think that's also important because that's how you get this real team dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I felt in the business. I always felt really looked after. I always felt like you gave a hoot about me. And it was very nice then taking the business to the next step because it wasn't like herding cats, right? Yeah. I had a cohesive business with a strong team, with smart individuals that we could just keep on pushing in the right direction.
Absolutely, that family feeling. If you come to work for Baggette Company, very quickly we hope that you feel part of the family, part of the team, and yes, I have always tried to look after. Sometimes you get members of staff that don't look after you.
No,
but that's employment. But by and large, I've been so lucky over the years. I've had some fantastic people work for me and support me.
Well, you say that, but right, this is the only place I've ever heard of, and I've definitely ever worked at, where we literally have a physical boomerang in the office. And we call people who leave and come back boomerangs.
We do indeed.
Because
And they have to wear it for a day.
And then usually the last boomerang is left on their desk because you've always had this mantra and always treated people with respect, so that even when people have left the business, for whatever reason, be it whatever the reason is, you've always treated the people with respect. You've always said that. You've always given people a handshake and gone, I wish you all the best. The door is always open, as long as they've acted appropriately. Yeah.
Yes.
And that way we have had a lot of people come back.
A lot.
Which is a lovely testament to the business, surely.
Yes, of course it is. Yeah, I possibly don't consider it enough, but it's lovely to think that the quality people they go off and try something else for whatever their reason is, or because of a rumor in the company, or any number of reasons that might be for leaving. And as you say, I generally say, is there any way that we could talk about you staying? And if there isn't, I'd say, well, look, I wish you all the best of luck, and don't be a stranger.
No.
We get a number barrel.
Yeah, which I think is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So what would you say are the core principles that have really stood the time at Baggette Co?
An old mentor of mine, I won't mention his name, but he was responsible for getting me into the insurance industry. He had a favourite saying in Latin, which was "Uberrime fides," loosely translated to "utmost good faith." And I think that would be a good starting point for a core value: integrity. And that has got to last forever. I think that having that empathy with clients, to use an old saying, you've got one of these and two ears. Listen. All of the basics. It's not rocket science. It's just giving as good a service as you possibly can, making the client feel as comfortable as they can, trying to make them as sure as you can be that they understand most of what you're saying, and make sure they feel that what they're getting is quality advice.
Quality personalized advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's to them.
I could be wrong, but I don't care where our AI goes. People will always want the human touch. And if they trust that person, they will always go to that person.
I think you're 100% right. I think there's an old saying, isn't there? Life insurance isn't bought, it's sold.
Yes.
Very few people go out and buy themselves life insurance, but most people need it. But it's one of those, and I think most people even recognize that they need it. For example, if you have children or a big mortgage and a spouse, you should probably have some cover in place. This is quite logical, but people don't do it. And even though the internet tells them they should do it, and if they put a question through an AI engine, it would probably tell them to do it. But until they speak to somebody, they probably won't do it, will they?
They'll put it off.
Well, planning for the future is really difficult. And also, as you and I both know, people recognizing their own mortality, that's a hard thing to accept. Even though we all know, who was it that said there's two certainties in life, death and taxes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but still, people put it off until it's too late. And we always encourage people to come and talk to us early. Even if we don't do anything, we maybe even be able to just give them some guidance on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for spending time with us today on the financial journey. Really appreciate it. Always lovely to talk to you, even in this formal setting.
Thank you.